Standing by, the Terry and Ted podcast is sponsored by the UPS Store Canada.
Terry and Ted podcast.
That's what we need. We need the
jingles.
Terry and Ted podcast singers.
That's right. We need
the
jingles.
old radio. Yeah, the old radio jingle singers.
Terry
Whatever
and
happened
Ted
to them?
podcast.
So you have different variations, different tempos.
Yeah, like if you listened to CKGM when you were a kid, there was, before a soft song, it was CKGM. And then if it was before a heavy song, it'd be like, CKGM. So we need that.
We don't.
Hello, I'm Terry DeMonte. That's Ted Bird.
Speaking.
It's a podcast sans invité
Oui,
aujourd'hui.
c'est juste nous, juste nos autres.
So you can tune out now if you like. See ya. No, these are kind of fun. And actually, we've asked for your participation today. And I'll get to all of that in a minute. Before we do, one thing we always have to say thank you to our title sponsor, the good people at the UPS Store Canada.
Not only do we have to, we want to.
Yeah, we do, actually, because, again, these are businesses. We're lucky enough that we believe in these businesses. They're not people that we don't know who, bought some advertising. These are people that we know and love and have a lot of respect for. And it starts at the top at the UPS Store Canada with David Drucker, longtime friend of ours. We had lunch with him the other day, and he told us, I said, how many locations now, David? And he said, 380 something.
Yeah, he's lost count.
Literally,
that's how prosperous he is.
All over the country, no matter where you are in Canada, you'll be able to find a UPS store near you. And we dropped by the one in Il Perot.
Yep. And saw Jason Liverman and Jason's wife, Nancy Friend. And they gave us the 10-cent tour of their store, and we saw them in action, too.
Yes, we did.
Some folks were coming in and out, including Grant, the UPS driver.
That's right.
Who was in his brown uniform in the brown truck, just like in the movies.
Courier services, packaging services. They can receive your parcels. They have mailbox rentals. If you have a business at home, these things are invaluable. They can do printing for you, copy services. Some lawyers and notaries still deal with faxes. Nobody has a fax machine at home. They can take care of that for you.
People still fax?
People still fax things.
Yeah.
You know what I saw online the other day? Dolly Parton doesn't have a cell phone and doesn't have email. The only way you can reach her...
You know what she does have?
Yes, sir. The only way you can reach her is fax.
Is that right?
Isn't that fascinating?
You mentioned attorneys and notaries.
Yes.
Do they still deal with faxes?
Yeah, sometimes if you're buying a house or you have to get legal documents, I know people still do it with email and stuff, but a lot of people like to have it in their hands right away, and they ask you for a fax. UPS Store can help you with that. They can help you with shredding services. You shouldn't leave your information in the garbage. You should. You shred
it. Don't light it on fire. Shred it, because fires can spread. Shredding can't.
The UPS Store can help you whether or not you have a business or you need to get something across the country or you need to pack something properly. They can help you with it all. The UPSstore.ca. So today on the program, on the podcast, we are going to talk about a couple of things that we want to get off our chest. And also, we posted on social media a little slide that said, if you have any questions for us, we'll respond to them today on this episode and maybe another episode where Ted and I are just on our own. And before we get into that, Ted, I want to say thank you to you and George. Thank you, George, for having me on the morning show.
I love him and stroke him and hug him and squeeze him and call him George. George Santrisos and I co-host the morning show on the Poseidon Podcast Comedy Network, which is where this podcast is also posted on the tube of you. And since Terry was in town, I said to George, let's have Terry in today. And I knew that you and George would get along like houses on fire.
Yes,
and that you would have some great spirited political conversation because you're both political junkies.
Yes.
And that's how it went. If you go to, where should they go, Poseidon, on YouTube?
For the morning show,
Pantelis
just type
for the
in
morning show.
Pantelis Comedy. That's the official name of the YouTube channel.
Pantelis. Actually, I type in Pantelis Morning Show.
You could type
and
that
it pops up. The October 18th edition. And you'll see Terry there, and you'll see George, and you'll see me. And I thought it was a great episode. We had a lot of fun and some good spirited conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
And we talk about on the morning show. We talk about current events.
Yes,
and it's less loosey goosey, laugh out loud than what you and I do on Standing By.
Yeah.
So it's a chance to flex a different kind of muscle.
Yeah, it is, and we had some nice conversations, like I said, about the political climate in this country and the States, and we discussed my friendship with the Prime Minister, and we discussed language. Odd that language came up when we were talking
on
politics.
the Montreal podcast.
Yeah,
what do you
language,
know about that?
Really, eh? That came up again. Anyway, it's available, and somebody gave money while we were doing that podcast.
How does that work?
It was $10 big. You can basically drop a super chat. It's called. And,
is that right? How does that work?
So.
When you're watching the morning show,
when you're watching the morning show and you want to be heard and you want to put where your money where your mouth is,
I see.
You drop whatever. You could drop like $2, $10, $20, whatever you like, in the super chat,
right?
And I will read it out loud.
Very good.
And the money goes to support the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, it goes to the channel
the production.
directly.
Yeah, that's Poseidon, who is our producer.
Hello, Poseidon.
Hello, gentlemen.
Nice to have you on the podcast. When we have guests, we ignore you, and I
Poor
feel
Poseidon.
I feel shame for that.
I do too.
Well,
I
don't
I
worry
don't.
about it. Why? Well, there's no reason.
Well,
to feel shame.
it's you're in the room, and I have my back to you because I'm looking at the guests. It's very rude.
If anything, you should feel more ashamed every time I speak on your podcast.
It's the self-loathing Poseidon, ladies and gentlemen.
How you guys doing?
Good, you?
Yeah, all good, and very excited to be back in the podcast studio. It's something that I just really enjoy. It's a nice outlet for the retired guy, and that and our little Saturday show that we do on the little radio station out in Hudson.
Saturday mornings on Light 106.7 FM, and during Terry's sojourn into town to record this season of the podcast, we did a live broadcast on Light 106.7. We did the Saturday morning show live from Felix and Norton Cookies, which is one of our sponsors on the radio station, from their new store on St. John's Boulevard in DDO, Quebec. And boy, did we have fun, and boy, did folks turn out for that, eh?
Yeah, it's such a nice compliment that people come and they bring pictures from days of yore, and somebody brought a Switchback sweatshirt, and people come to talk about growing up with us, and
people who've been listening to us since before Poseidon even heard of us.
Yeah, it
was only a couple of years ago that Pantelis said, "We're getting Terry and Ted," and Poseidon went, "Who?
Yeah, who are those guys?" And also, it's a nice celebration of. It's a bit of a nostalgic moment for Miss Felix and Mr. Norton Cookies. They used to have stores all over Montreal, and then those disappeared for a while, and it turned into a different kind of business. Now there's that retail location that smells like freshly baked cookies and is beautifully designed.
And the recipe hasn't changed, eh?
No,
the
it has not.
Taste
it's
exactly the same
good.
And are just as delicious as they ever were.
Oatmeal and raisin are back.
At Terry DeMonte's insistence.
Well,
Felix and Norton brought them back specifically to stop him from belly aching.
I kept dropping the hint. I kept dropping the hint. So thank you, Michael. We're gonna answer your questions before this episode is done. Thanks for the response on Facebook and the Twitter, by the way. We appreciate that. And I think I also put it on Instagram. We're going to cover a couple of topics today, including if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that Ted is wearing his shirt recognizing his beloved New York Giants that are pretty hard to be beloving this particular season.
As of the time of this recording, the Giants suck ass.
Gosh.
In a big way, but you got to stick with your team.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You got to stick with your team.
Ted went down. I watched the game on TV. I said to Ted, don't forget to wave in case you end up on television. So Jess and I, Jess is a big NFL football fan.
Who's her favorite team?
Well, she kind of likes the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Odd choice.
Yeah, well, you know what? We watched the quarterback series. I don't know if you watched it on Netflix. No. It was a great great series, and they chose. There was
Well, if it was Minnesota, there was Kirk Cousins.
And Mahomes.
Yeah, from Kansas City.
And a man who didn't stay with Atlanta, whose name I'm forgetting. He was with it. He's been around. He went to. He was Atlanta, and then he left. And,
I know who you mean.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Matt Ryan. It
wasn't Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it was a series on 4 quarterbacks, and she said, I'm really enjoying this piece on Kirk Cousins and his family and the Minnesota Vikings, and she was kind of drawn towards that.
Reason.
Yeah. So anyway,
so she's watching the Giants get the shit kicked out of them by the Dolphins in Miami, where Sam and I, my son Sam and I were at that game.
We couldn't believe how ill-prepared the Giants looked on all levels. I'm not a football coach, but special teams, the offensive line, the defense, they sucked at every turn in every position. And you said that coach was a genius last year. He didn't look like a genius.
He was the NFL Coach of the Year last year. The Giants had a breakthrough season. They made the playoffs. They beat the Vikings in the wild card game. They made on paper, some great offseason moves. And Sam and I were so excited and enthusiastic about this season. So we bought our tickets for Miami. The game was October 8th. We bought our tickets in May. I bought them on a website called Game Time, which is like StubHub, but it's just a different website. Was recommended to me. Got a couple of seats on the 40-yard line for $735 Canadian for the pair, which I know it's a lot of money, but that's what it costs these days to get good seats at an NFL game. And when we got to the gate at the stadium on game day, my tickets were invalid.
Wow.
Yep.
Jesus.
Are you sure? Yep, invalid, sir.
Wow.
We've scanned them 3 times. They're no good. So at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, the customer service is unbelievable. They had 2 people taking care of us.
Wow.
And one of them said, I'll be back in 10 minutes. And he went somewhere and made a phone call or went online or something, and he came back and said, the season ticket holder whose tickets you purchased defaulted on his account, so his account was suspended. That's why the tickets are no good. But Game Time, who I bought the tickets through, didn't bother notifying me of that. So on the spot, having already spent $735 for 2 tickets that turned out to be no good, we spent another $800 with StubHub so that we could get into the game. And at that point, we're there. There's no way I'm going all the way to Miami and we're getting to the gate at the stadium and not going to the game. And so I laid out the $800 and we got tickets, and then
hitchhiked home.
Yeah. No, the next day, I sent a note. Actually, that night I sent an email to Game Time saying, here's my transaction number. My tickets were invalid at the gate. I got a note back from them the next day saying, sorry about your experience. Please provide us with the following, and a big long list, like forensic evidence, your receipt. Screenshots of the tickets, what time you arrived at the gate, what time your tickets were scanned. They wanted screenshots of the scans saying invalid, which I didn't take. It never occurred to me at the time. Anyway, Sam put together everything they asked for and sent an email back to them, and like 10 days later, hadn't heard a thing. So
I'm cynical. I think the forensic evidence part is the beginning of them hoping you'll go away.
Probably.
And the lack of return and lack of response is, again, hoping you will go away.
Well, I have written it off at this point, and so I went on Twitter, on my Twitter account, and I said never, ever buy tickets for event tickets from, and I tagged them at Game Time.
Yeah.
Because I bought tickets for a football game in Miami, and they were invalid when I got to the game. And inquiries for refunds, my subsequent inquiries, I sent them 3 subsequent emails over the course of a week. Could you please just acknowledge that you're looking into my situation? Please acknowledge that you've received this email and that my file is being attended to. And I heard sweet fuck all back from them. So that's when I went on Twitter, and I'm sure now, Twitter X as it's now called, I'm sure they saw that because they don't have a huge following on their Twitter account. They get about 40,000 people. So whoever does their social media saw that. So now it's probably, well, fuck him. he's going to trash us publicly. He's not getting his money back. And then, but a lawyer friend of mine sent me a note and said, I'm going to help you get your money back.
He'll send a govern yourself accordingly
Exactly.
note.
Yeah, I forget what he called it.
Yeah.
It's a specific.
I'll tell you what impressed me. It impressed me that you got the kind of attention from the Miami Dolphins staff.
They were terrific.
Because
they
in
were
amazing. On a lot of occasions, and I've seen it in some venues, when that light flashes red and you don't have proper tickets, they ask you to step aside. Like a lot of venues take the "this isn't my problem"
Yeah,
where you
sweep
got
on next.
Yeah, sorry, you're holding up the line. There's nothing I can do to help you. So I was really impressed by that story about the Dolphin staff.
They were actually disappointed for me. Like when I tried it the second time, the guy was like, "Oh,
That's
yeah."
Because I know now. You know, we were talking about this with Michael Farber about the days when you used to hold the tickets in your hand and look at them and get all excited for the day.
Sure.
And now my wife handles, like our concert tickets and everything else. And I can't help it when we go to the venue, whether it's in Seattle or at the Rogers Center in Vancouver, when they scan the phone, the QR code, I always hold my breath. And I wait for the light to turn green because I think, I wonder if we did something wrong or we're,
Yeah, well, something sure went wrong with me,
Wow.
and that was a big disappointment. But like I say, we went all the way there.
Yeah, well, you're not
And,
going to walk away at that point.
Yeah, and Sam said to me, "Dad, you're handling this surprisingly well."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, something of this magnitude, I'll say to myself, okay, we have to figure this out. A busted shoelace, however, is like, for fuck's sake, what the fuck is this shit?"
And I have to say, you want to follow through with that because these are nice father-son memories that a lot of people don't get to make.
Well, the Giants got off to such a bad start. We talked about how terrible they are. When they lost the previous week, they got blown out by, I think it was Seattle. And I was so angry watching the game. And this is an example of the for fuck's sakes I was talking about. I sent Sam a text and I said, "We're not going. I'm selling the tickets." I said, "I'm selling the tickets and we're staying at home." And he talked me out of it. He sent me back a note and he said, "You know what, Dad?" He said, "It's our thing and we do it.
Yeah.
And I know they suck, but come on.
We're going.
It's our thing." And the next day at the airport, I couldn't get my fucking passport to scan. Like I'm trying to check myself in because there's no one at the counters,
Do
right?
it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't get my fucking passport to scan, and I get so fucking angry. And I sent him a note. I can't get signed in. My passport won't scan. I'm going home.
We're not going.
We're not going. Yeah. and he sent Danielle, his mom, a note and said, "Please go to the airport and help Dad check in." And she texted me and said, "Don't go home. I'm on my way."
She actually went to the airport?
Well, she was on her way, but
okay.
then I figured it out.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Jesus. You're like me. I don't know if this is a thing. I
think it's called emotional immaturity.
That for sure, but
Yeah.
I used to be able to do things by myself. Like I come to Montreal for the podcast without my wife, and I miss her terribly, and I feel like I can't do anything without her.
Yeah, well, when I was married to Danielle, she took care of everything, and so now that we're not married anymore, I'm lost.
I feel like a klutz.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can't, Jess said to me, "Make sure you put gel in your hair before you go because I don't want to see you on YouTube with that bad, shaggy, Mark's brother, not Mark's, the Three Stooges hair."
Right, yeah.
Because, if I had my way, I would just leave in the morning and just, But I feel like we're a team, and I feel lost without her.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
obviously, God bless Dan for saying, "I'm on my way."
Yeah, she was. Yeah, well, she less for me than for Sam.
Right.
She wanted Sam to go to Miami and go to the game and have his fun. What was really interesting about going to Miami? I had never been to South Beach.
Yeah.
And Sam and I were the guest of our first guest on the podcast this season, Bob Merrier, the interventionist and sobriety coach from Montreal. Bob has a place in South Beach. And when I called him up to ask him what's a good hotel near the stadium, he said, "Never mind that." He said, "I'm going to get you a condo in my building." He's in a condo building where people, it's people basically from colder climes who come down intermittently and occasionally. And so they'll rent out each other's condos
Right.
kind of thing. So he got us a place, and we stayed in South Beach. And boy, I felt inadequate in South Beach. There's a lot of money in South Beach.
Well, I was going to ask you about how you enjoyed the travel gouge, because anybody who's traveled in the last couple of years knows what kind of gouging is going on. I won't partake, but a lot of people do. And the more wealthy or the more prosperous the area, like South Beach, I think the deeper the gouge goes.
Probably, yeah. We, God bless his soul. I shouldn't say that because he's not dead.
Yeah.
God bless him. Bob came to the airport and got us, and we landed in Lauderdale, which is like, I don't know, 40 minutes or whatever from
Yep.
in traffic. It was an hour. He came and got us when we landed, and he had already come back to Montreal when we left to come home. So he got us a driver. And that was $80 US
Jesus,
to get to
Murphy.
the airport.
Wow.
And then when I got back to Montreal to go from Dorval to Pointe Claire, you know how far I live from the airport.
Yeah.
You could throw a rock. You might have to pick it up and throw it a second time,
Yeah.
but you could hit my house if you threw a rock. And that was $25.
Well-
Tell your story.
Yeah, get a load of this. I land at 1 a.m. Friday morning last. 1 a.m., not exactly a high traffic time of the day. And
There shouldn't be a lineup at the cab stand.
no. And I thought, no, do I take a cab? I thought, the Uber door is right there. I'm tired. While I'm waiting for my bag, I'll order an Uber. And I was staying and am staying at a hotel right around the corner from the airport. Literally, it's one of those airport hotels on Cardinal. And it's the Fairfield. It's maybe a 6-minute drive. Maybe. And at 1 a.m, it's probably a 5-minute drive.
Yeah.
So I type in my destination and blah, blah, blah on the Uber app. Surge pricing, $66 they wanted at 1 in the goddamn morning.
For a 5-minute drive.
For a 5-minute drive.
That's absurd.
$66.
So get this. I go looking for the hotel shuttle, which isn't there. And as I'm standing waiting for the shuttle, a cab driver slowly drives by on the departure level, because you're not allowed to pick up people on the departure level. That's cheating. You're supposed to get in line and get it that way. So he rolls down his window, and I said, I'm not going far. I'm just going over to a hotel. He said, okay, that's okay. I'll take you. Puts my bag in the trunk. I get in the car, and I notice he doesn't turn on the meter. And I figure, that's fine. You know, we'll come to some kind of agreement. And literally, I get in the car, and it's, okay, we're here. And I get out of the cab, and before I get out of the cab, I said to the guy, I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out a 20, and I said to him, does this cover it? Thinking he would say, yeah, that's great, thanks. And he said to me, no, it doesn't. The standard from the airport is 25.
So that's the starting rate from the airport.
Yeah, whatever, pal. I mean, honestly, and you know, by that time it was 2 a.m. We had to begin recording on Friday. I didn't want to argue with him, so I gave him the $25. So that's my little gouge
Yeah,
story.
that's part of the gouge.
I remember when Uber was first around, from the airport to downtown, depending on how much traffic there was, would cost maybe $35 to $55.
Yeah,
To downtown. That's what, 17 kilometers?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Now, yeah, that's insane. That's
What
absurd.
does surge pricing mean?
Well,
That suggests to me high volume,
Demand,
busy time.
high demand.
How
That's
can there be high demand at 1 o'clock in the
That's
morning?
the thing. It was a load of bullshit, is what it was.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of people are complaining about that with Uber, and a lot of people, I think, a lot of businesses are throwing shit at the wall to see what people will fall for.
Yeah.
You know, there are hotel rooms that 3 years ago were $2 or $3 or let's say even $400. There's a hotel at the airport in Vancouver that my wife and I would like to stay at if we had an early morning flight, because we live 45 minutes from the airport. So we'd say, you know, let's go, we'll stay there, and you get up in the morning, you go right downstairs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of handy. It's similar to the Marriott at Dorval.
Yeah.
You go right downstairs, you're already at the airport. And on our particular date, we clicked on the website and it said, BC Resident Special. And I said, oh, sweetheart, they're having a special, a sale. So I clicked on it, and it was $990 a night
God,
for
damn.
a 400 square foot room.
That's a standard size hotel room.
Yeah. It's like, it's basically a bed, a shower, and a shitter for not even 9 hours.
$1,000.
Yes. So, but we won't.
How special is that?
Thanks. We won't participate in it. I won't, even if I have the money, I'm not paying it. Like, I had the $60 to pay to Uber, but out of the principle, I was like, no, fuck you. I'm not paying that. I'm not doing that.
Well, you know what? The place you're staying at here, that Fairfield Inn and Suites out at the airport, it's not the Ritz.
No.
But I noticed yesterday, I go and pick Terry up there every morning. First of all, shout out to the Filipino ladies who run the
breakfast bar.
The breakfast bar, because I don't know if they know or not that I'm not staying there, but every morning I go in and I help myself to breakfast.
Well, you've ruined that now.
Sorry. Well, I don't think they're listening to us.
Okay.
But they're as friendly and as nice as they can be.
Yeah.
And I don't think they know that I'm Freddie the freeloader. How would they?
No. And
the fact that I'm showing up every morning suggests that I'm staying there.
It's a Marriott hotel, and I'll tell you what I'm paying $179 a night.
Oh my God, you just gave me an idea.
What's that?
I thought you were going to say you just gave me an erection.
No.
For $179 a night.
Well, in terms of hotels,
yeah, that's a great
you
rate.
cannot find a hotel
Anything
room
under 200?
anywhere under $200.
Oh, you want my idea? So because I work at the airport part-time as well.
Yes.
Right.
I think before going into work, I'm going to jump in for some free breakfast.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
then go
I
to
feel
work.
bad.
Yeah. Just be nice to them. I'm nice to them, and I joke
Well, you
around
might get
with
them all fired.
Well, no, I'm not. They don't. Well, they don't know.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they
No.
don't. And I don't think they're listening. I don't think our
And you weren't there.
Fairfield-
First of all, you weren't there every day.
No.
You went. You joined me once there for a coffee. I don't think that's the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't want to plug them because I don't get anything for free
No,
from
I understand,
them.
but I was impressed with the place.
We've been
for
looking
the money that you pay.
Yes, we've been looking for a hotel, hoping a hotel would sponsor my stay in Montreal, and we can't find one.
Yeah, so I shouldn't be.
I go looking for a reasonably priced hotel, and that's the Fairfield Inn.
Are they a Marriott property?
They are.
Okay, well then I'm going to talk to Brenda Rodrigues.
Very good.
And try to get you in there for a sponsorship thing. Let me say this just before we move on about that hotel. Here's what when the jury came in for me on that being, the price is already good, but on it being a good hotel is when I went to the washroom the other day and it was spotless and sparkling.
And the
clean.
staff are amazing, and the rooms are simple and they're clean. They're big.
Clean counts for so much.
big time, and the staff are amazing. And really, for that level of price in this day and age, it's quite something.
I once heard it
That's
said that
quite a commercial we've given them there.
we sure have.
Yeah.
Sorry, Terry. I know you're mad at me now.
No,
for doing
that's
that.
fine.
I once heard it said that if you want to know how clean the kitchen is in a restaurant, go to the bathroom.
Well, you know what? When I worked at McDonald's, that was McDonald's philosophy. They taught us that people will judge the restaurant on the cleanliness of the washroom. And when I worked there, they had a crew member in the washroom at least every hour, making sure it was spick and span.
Yeah. If the washroom is clean, the kitchen is clean.
Yeah.
If the washroom is filthy, go somewhere else.
Chances are it isn't good. I want to talk about Pantelis' quest to bridge the two solitudes. But before we do that, I want to tell you about our new sponsor, Sugar Sammy.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this. I got a call about a month ago from Sam. And Sam and I have been friends for a while, and I don't need to tell you who Sugar Sammy is. If you're a Montrealer or a Quebecer listening to this podcast, he really is quite a phenomenon in the comedy scene. He has broken new ground in comedy in Quebec and in Canada with his bilingual shows, and he's been rewarded with nonstop sellouts for years now, literally for years. His advertising is bold and funny and pisses off the people at the Journal de Montréal.
Yeah, and he's making all the right people mad.
Yeah. And it's bold, it's clever, it's courageous, it's a social commentary, and most importantly, it's some of the funniest comedy that's been put together for years and years and years. He's just got so good at this, And he's becoming a worldwide phenomenon. Sam is a big star in France with the America's Got Talent show.
France's version
of that. He's a judge on that.
France a beaucoup de capabilité.
I'm not sure what it's called. And now he's on tour across the country, and he's decided that there are French people across the country, and he's taking it on the road. As we're recording this, I'm going to be seeing him this coming weekend in Vancouver. He's already performed in Winnipeg, and he's taking it to Western cities in
Edmonton, Calgary.
Yeah, the bilingual shows. And if you are in Montreal, start making plans for next year now.
Yeah. And hop to it, because the January 2023 is all sold out. So he added 2024 shows. January sold out like that. And now February is in the process of being sold out. So go to sugarsammy.com now and get your tickets. If you've never seen Sammy before, it is a show not to be missed. If you've seen him before, you know he's worth going back to see again.
We saw him at UQAM, the theater that was at the, UQAM is a hotbed of nationalism.
Yep.
And I don't know this to be true, but I think he deliberately picked that theater because he likes to poke the bear.
But he had them eaten out of the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Yeah,
they
everybody
loved it. And didn't
loves
we
them.
sit beside, was it Jean-François Lisée we sat beside? Was it?
I didn't know it was Jean-François Lisée.
Isn't he a former PQ leader?
Oh, is he ever?
Yeah.
He's really PQ-y.
Yeah. Well, he was the leader, was he not?
Yeah, he was at one point. And that's a testament to so many people who go to see Sammy in French, both on the French side and the English side. I'm telling you, it's just a wonderful, wonderful show. Get your tickets. Plan to get them. Makes a great Christmas present, by the way.
Yep.
We're recording this in October of 2023, so makes a great Christmas present. SugarSammy.com. Get them before they're gone. Now, speaking of comedy, I love this idea. I went with you last night to the Bordell. Do tell. About the Bordell.
The Bordell is a spectacular comedy club. I think it's, with all due respect to our great and good friends David Acker and Phil Shushat, who own the Comedy Nest, and the late Ernie Butler, who founded the Comedy Nest, God rest his soul. I think the Bordell is on the French side, it's the hottest club in town. There's no doubt about that. And it's just also so beautifully laid out and put together and well thought out. I think, and Poseidon can confirm this, I believe, it's owned by 6 comedians, right?
Absolutely.
Mike Ward and 5 other comedians own the place.
Right.
So they know a thing or two about how to set up a comedy club. They know how to set up a room. And those rooms, there are 2 rooms at the Bordell. They're so beautifully set up for stand-up comedy. And the pub, the Le Pub Quartier Spectacle or something like that. What's it called?
Le Pub Quartier Latin, if I'm not mistaken.
That.
You can tell which one of us grew up here and can actually speak French.
You can mange bien there, eh?
You can mange very bien there. So Pantelis has organized Tuesday night English night at what is otherwise a full-time French comedy club. And we were there last night. I did a set. Have you done a set there yet, Poseidon?
No.
Well, you should. Get on Pantelis. I talked him into letting me go up. He went, fine,
I haven't done stand-up in a while, so I don't know.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was a good show. It was a lot of fun, and it's the best-kept secret in English Montreal,
and
unfortunately.
Here's the thing that I love about Pantelis. He's finding comedians that are off the radar and are fall-down funny. Last night reminded me, Ted, of when you and I used to go to Club Soda and see unknown comedians like Louis C.K.
Yeah.
You know, that Quinn kid that we met after the show.
I wish I could have remembered his last name.
Can you find out for us, Poseidon?
Young Montreal comedian, first name Quinn. Quinn.
Yeah. Him and the ginger boy there.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Harrison
Weinreb. Yeah, isn't he the greatest Poseidon?
This guy, Harrison's going to be a star.
Yeah.
And Pantelis is not only discovering these people and finding them out, he's bringing them to an audience that doesn't know that they're there in a really, really beautiful club. And what he's trying to do is get English people to go down to that area and experience that nice club and that nice restaurant. So if you're listening to this and you've never been down that way, I highly recommend. Is it always Tuesday night, Ted?
Tuesday night is English comedy night at the Bordell on Ontario Street East, just maybe 2 blocks west of Barrie.
Yeah.
And go early and eat at Le Pub Quelque Chose.
Yeah.
The food there is so good. And then for $15, $15, an evening of stand-up, of quality stand-up comedy. $15. That's what a pack of smokes costs now, isn't it, Poseidon? Or did you quit?
Yeah.
Are you still off the weed?
I lost that battle.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Sorry to hear.
Well, listen, man, don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't
One of the things that I loved, like I said about that, I love when you find a new comedy voice.
Yeah.
And you discover new styles and stuff that made us belly laugh last night.
Yeah.
There were
Harrison had his belly laughing right out of the
from
gate.
the get-go.
What did he say at the beginning?
how is everybody? Are you sick? I'm sorry, Harrison. I'm not
comedians
doing.
probably hate that.
Yeah,
when
they
it-
do.
Yeah.
But he's got. I said to Ted, he's got a little Stephen Wright in him.
Yeah, he's very
and
dry.
Just really, he's got his own style.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing we've seen so many comedians over the years. I remember thinking to myself, this kid is going to be a star.
Very dry, very likable.
And so is, I think Quinn is on his way too.
Wait, could you find him? Did you find him?
No, I didn't find
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
because I tried earlier, and we'll have to ask.
Isn't it
Maybe
on
maybe he follows me on Instagram. I don't
Isn't
know.
or
it on
send-
Pantelis' tweet, isn't it?
Is it?
Is it with the
Well,
pictures?
The pictures are, but I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think
it
the
is.
names
Okay.
are.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the names are
Probably
on there.
not. Yeah.
Send Pantelis a text, Poseidon, and ask him what Quinn's last name is, because it would be nice to give him a. It would be nice to give him a plug.
the mighty Quinn.
Oh, this guy.
That guy. Hey, there's that guy.
Quinn.lag.
Quinn Lag?
Quinn.Lager. I don't know.
How do you spell it?
Quinn with 2 N's dot Lague.
Oh,
Lag.
yeah.
Lag.
Quinn, if you're listening to this, we're very sorry.
Yeah.
We really loved your routine and your comedy, and we're sorry about fucking up your name. That's really not nice. Quinn told me while we were leaving the building last night, we had to leave early. We didn't get to see the rest of the lineup because Ted and I had to get up today to do the podcast. He told me that he came into the studio at the old radio station when he was at Riverdale High School. He said, "This is the second time I've met you." And I said, "Oh, have we met before?" He said, "Yeah, I came into the studio one morning when I was in high school."
And I said to Terry, I would have thought you'd remember that voice, because he had a set of pipes on him. He had the biggest voice. He must carry his testicles around in a wheelbarrow with a voice like that.
What do we know? What do you call the 2 dots? Are those umlauts?
Umlaut. An umlaut.
Language specialist
Yeah.
Terry DeMonte. Don't forget your umlauts. What
so
is
he's
it?
got an umlaut in his last name, and
that
his
what it
first
is?
name's Quinn. So he's like an Irish German.
So how do you pronounce the E when there's an umlaut there?
I couldn't tell you, not a clue.
I just call it E with a double dots.
We'll have to get him. Hey, he's got a bunch of mutual friends of mine. We'll have to get him on the podcast sometime. I liked him a lot. I'd like to get Harrison on too.
Yeah, me too. The reason we wanted to mention this is because it needs more support.
Yeah.
The idea of getting English people down to Ontario Street. And by the way, even don't tell the premier, but everybody's bilingual down there.
Yeah. Well, the crowd last night was all young bilingual francophones.
Which is what Sugar Sammy knew
Yep.
when he came up with the concept for his show. And the wait staff and the organizers, poor organizing kid came up to me and he said, Est-ce que ça va continuer de fois? And I said, excuse me? He's, le commissaire, he said, quoi?
And then he figured out that
And then
you were
he
having
said-
trouble.
He said, tu parles français? And like an idiot, I said, oui.
Yeah.
And then he said,
Juste pas maintenant.
yeah. And I finally gave up and I said, he's performing. And the kid switched right away
Yeah.
and said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. So like, don't be frightened of it. Everybody is super nice, amazing. And it's a wonderful way to discover the other side of the city and new comedy voices.
And again, for the price of a pack of smokes. And that room full of young francophones, young hip francophones, all laughed at old English guys' jokes.
They sure
and that was
did.
very gratifying for me.
They sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
I have a question for you
Yes,
guys.
please.
Coming back on the hotel breakfast topic,
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst breakfast you've ever had at a hotel?
at a hotel,
Because I have a story about that. I think it's
Okay.
a good story.
I'm trying to think of worst breakfast because
It's all pretty standard
yeah,
to me.
pretty amazing. For that at the Fairfield where I'm staying, that spread that they put out in the morning for like $179 a night is
Yeah.
it's
And it's the nice thing about it is that it's complimentary. It's
Yeah.
it's part of the
Yeah.
deal. Because if you go to a hotel where you have to pay breakfast,
Yeah.
you're looking at $35 for bacon and eggs now.
Yeah.
That's a guess on my part, but
most because I usually choose a nice hotel to stay in. Poseidon, nothing immediately comes to mind. I'm saying you've got a
So the worst hotel breakfast I've ever had in my life is when we were on tour for Mike's Au Noir tour.
Right.
We were staying at this hotel in Gatineau that was attached to the casino.
oh yeah.
And for some reason, Mike,
Lac Kelka shows, Lac Limi.
yeah, for some reason he put me, or they put me. I don't know who they put me in the presidential suite. I think it was intended for Mike, but I think I got it by mistake. And Mike was just like, "Look, he's experienced so much poverty in his life. Let the kid." you know?
That's nice of him.
And that room came with the breakfast. This hotel, you had to pay for the breakfast.
Right.
But this room came with the breakfast. And I was like, oh, fuck, look at me, presidential suite. And I was all excited. I'm like, I'm going to eat like a king. And I get to the restaurant of the hotel. It was somewhere on the upper floor.
Right.
And they sit me down. I'm like, oh, this is nice and everything. I'm like, okay, when can I go and get food? And they're like, we'll bring it to you. Don't worry, sir. And they bring me this small plate with the smallest breakfast burrito I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, it was delicious, but I was so disappointed
and so hungry, I guess.
and hungry at
Yeah.
the quantity of food.
And that was it.
That was it. That was all you got. You got a half
Oh,
a
it is.
burrito, breakfast burrito with a teaspoon of salsa on it, and some decorative tomatoes, and that was it. And I was so now it was delicious, but I was so angry that I loaded. Like, you were allowed to go and get toast. I loaded up on toast. I was like, fuck it.
You couldn't order a second burrito?
Nope. It was,
That was
all
it?
yeah. It was all measured for, taking into account for the
Wow.
people that had it included.
That's kind of shitty.
Let's answer some questions, Ted. We promised that we would answer some questions.
I said I would only answer multiple choice or true or false.
All right.
What do you got?
So on the
False.
By the way, you can follow us on social media.
Social media.
Yeah.
Go to your social media platforms.
Also, you can follow us on social media.
There too.
We do have a Standing by the Terry and Ted podcast page on the Facebook. And I did post there. You can ask us some questions. Giacchino wants to know when the new season is coming out. So I'll answer him on Facebook, obviously,
Okay.
because the season is already out if you're listening to this. This is an interesting question, I thought, from Jason Graves. What was the very first vehicle each of you purchased? What was the year, make, and model of the very first vehicle that you bought? Now, I don't know if Jason means the first nice car or the first car.
I think he means first car.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to go?
Sure. 1971 Porsche 914.
What?
Do you remember the Porsche 914?
I do.
It was like a glorified Volkswagen.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I bought it from a cabinet minister in PEI. I was living and working in Charlottetown. I think his name was Barry Clark. And I bought this car, and it was a real piece of shit. And it came with a spare engine.
That
Well,
should have
that's
been
how
a
much-
red
yeah,
flag.
well, seriously, but I was 19 years old.
Yeah, of course.
And all I knew
Yeah.
was that I was getting
Yeah.
a Porsche, and so I bought the thing, and I moved to Montreal not too long after that, and I somehow managed to get it here. But on the drive from PEI to Montreal, it broke down 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And
Quiet car, too, that thing.
oh yeah. And by the time I got it here, I got it to Boucherville, and I left it in a parking lot out there because it was not running, and then I had it towed to the apartment building that I moved into in Montreal, and then within a couple of months I had sold it to somebody who understood
What a piece of shit it was.
and that it was a reclamation project, and and I sold it for a few $100 and took a big bath on it and learned a lesson.
There you go. Oddly enough, my first car was a Volkswagen, a Volkswagen Beetle. I bought a 67 Volkswagen Beetle from a nice old lady that literally only drove it on the weekends to shop. I think when I picked it up, whatever it was, I think it was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I paid $250 for it. She worked at the Protestant School Board of Greater Montreal, which is on it's Côte St. Luc Road, I think. Anyway, she lived right around the corner, and literally a friend of mine that lived across the street, our neighbors, said, I got the perfect car for you, and I bought it, and I loved that car so much and drove it into the ground. And to this day, I would like to have a VW Beetle just for the nostalgia of it, and I would like to buy one. But I'm online sometimes looking to see if I can buy one. I had 3 or 4 of them over the course of my lifetime. And a VW Beetle in decent shape is now over $10,000.
Wow.
For the Beetle.
Yeah.
So
well, it's a piece of nostalgia, and it's a collector's item. Was that the original one, the first one you bought? Was that the red one that our late great friend Skip Snare ended up with?
No,
because that was yours as well. Was it not?
That was a 73 that I sold to Skip.
Okay,
and
that was a beautiful car.
Yeah, I loved that car too. And I, at one point, I just had. This is going to sound so douchey, but
I had too many cars.
I had too many cars. At one point, like an idiot. I'm gonna say this because it's the podcast. I'm embarrassed by this. I had a BMW 540. Mm-hmm. I had a BMW Z4.
Remember that?
2 BMWs in the driveway with one ass. I've only got one ass.
Terry and I used to drive around in the Z4 with the top down looking like life partners.
And I had a Volkswagen in a garage that I just never drove and couldn't use, and Skip loved it, and that's why I sold it.
We should use this as a segue. Talk about our friends at Jaguar Land Rover Laval.
If you like, sure.
Speaking of automobiles.
More questions to come, by the way. I've got them in my hand here.
Jaguar Land Rover Laval has been a sponsor of this podcast from the very beginning, and every time we come to town, I'm already here. Every time Terry comes to town, they give me a courtesy vehicle to ferry Terry to and from the studio. And the first time around, they gave us a Land Rover Defender. What a beautiful, big luxury hog that thing was. And then they gave us the Jaguar F-Type Sports Coupe, which was a spectacular vehicle. That'll move right along. That'll get you where you're going in a hurry.
Sure will.
Third time around, I believe, was the Discovery Sport, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. There was the F-Pace SUV, and this time around, it's the Range Rover Evoke.
You want to talk about comfort? Holy smoke.
Yeah, I have to be careful not to fall asleep at the wheel of that thing. A, because I'm old and tired, and B, because it's just such a comfortable ride. Yeah. And it's the perfect urban vehicle.
It sure is.
It's very, very snazzy looking. It's very sleek. It's a Range Rover, but it's not the big-ass Range Rover, so it's a lot easier to maneuver around the city and to park. And it's got all the Range Rover amenities and the Range Rover name on the back.
I want to buy it.
It's just a beautiful.
I said to Ted yesterday, how many miles does it have on it? Because they have just a beautiful previously owned.
Their pre-owned inventory. Yeah. I looked online at Jaguar Land Rover Laval's pre-owned inventory. They've got 3 or 4 Range Rover Evokes for sale up there with low mileage, but because they're pre-owned, I think the way it works with cars, I think the minute you drive them off the lot, a new one off the lot, like the depreciation is it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So you can get a low mileage, pre-owned, certified Land Rover Evoke for, relatively speaking, not a whole lot of money. Go to jaguarlaval.ca or landroverlaval.ca. It's fun just to window shop online at a luxury car dealership like that, just to see what there is. And have a look at those Evokes. You'll like what you see. jaguarlaval.ca, landroverlaval.ca.
One of our new sponsors that we're excited to welcome is a company called Accutech Electric. I got a note from Tom and Trish, and I had a Zoom meeting with them. And my first question to them was, why on earth do you think we could help you? Ted and I don't know anything about, becoming a master electrician. And Tom said, that's okay. I'm a second-generation master electrician at the helm of Accutech Electric. It's a family-run business. It's a common theme. Ted and I love family-run businesses because you're always able to deal with the owner. You don't have to write a letter to the head office in Toronto. Exactly. Yeah. And they've just got I had a nice long chat with Tom. They just got a wonderful approach to business, a wonderful approach to their employees. They foster a really beautiful attitude at the shop and a lovely work ethic that they like to know leads to professional quality service for the customers. They specialize in high-end residential renovations and new builds. If you're getting ready to build a new house, they can offer high-quality custom work. They can take care of simple electric problems. Safety is their top priority. Ted and I say this all the time when we talk about them. When it comes to electricity in the house, you don't want to leave that to amateurs.
No, you don't. No.
Yeah.
Why are you standing in that mud puddle while you're inserting that?
By the way, they also have 25 years of servicing the industrial sector. They specialize in machine maintenance, installing safety items in machines. They work with plant managers. They can tell you how to change your lighting, offer a lighting solution, help you get a hydro rebate for a lighting upgrade. They can steer you through any electrical problem you may need solved. I loved these people, and I think you will too. If you're looking for people that can solve your problems with electrics, you want to call them. Accutech Electric Incorporated. Just tell Tom and Trish you did hear the knuckleheads and you want more information. You can email them, by the way, info@accutech, ACUTECH.ca. That's where their website is, accutech.ca. Okay.
More questions?
More questions?
More briefing?
More briefing, Mr. Elephant? All right, here's... this is an interesting question from Helder Santos. If both of you were going to live on a desert island but could only take one thing, what would it be?
Wow.
God, yes. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
I'd say Tiffany.
I don't know who Tiffany is, but
Poseidon does.
Okay. The first thing that comes, I don't know. I guess my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right?
I remember
That's
seeing...
the right answer.
Yes, okay.
Especially for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark-
Tiffany doesn't even talk to me, but you're married to Jess.
Mark Bajaron Molloy says, I remember seeing a post from you guys a while ago saying you had been recording episodes all day and you were into your 23rd hour. What do you do to keep focused and keep going on for so long?
I don't remember being into our 23rd hour.
What the fuck is that?
Not sure. Mark must have thought we were working for a long time. We've done that in the past. When we were doing a radio
when we
show.
were younger.
Yeah, when we were a younger
Yeah.
show. Now we just...
Yeah, but I mean, it's a legit question because we record an entire season in a week. So, and we've experienced it this week. It's, we're not doing heavy lifting or anything like that. But when you've got to be quote unquote on, for an hour or more, and you do that 3 times a day, it can be mentally draining. So what we do is we take a lot of Benzedrine, a lot of Benzedrine. No, that's not true. No, there's not much you can do except pace. You pace yourself
And keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tammy wants to know, Tammy Champagne says, what's the process of radio stations playing artists' music to those artists getting royalties from their music being played? How does it get documented? Who documents it? Who sends out the checks? Tammy, the radio stations are governed by rules that say they've got to keep track of what they play, who they play, and when they play it. And I think it's 2 or 3 times a year. There's an association of musicians and producers.
Is that SOCAN?
Yeah, SOCAN, and there's another one, KPAC, I think. They call for the documentation, and then they have a formula where they, like let's say Working for the Weekend by Loverboy, they get all of the documentation from all of the radio stations across the country, and based on a certain formula, they pay out royalties for those songs. That's how that works. Richard wanted to know, he's mentioned on the air during one of his retirement broadcasts that WKRP was the closest program to the real thing, and I'd like to know why. Richard, when I worked in Winnipeg, in my very first radio station at City FM, there was a WKRP style staff. We had a general manager that was a little bit like big guy.
Yeah.
We had a sales
Arthur Carlson.
Arthur Carlson. We had a sales manager that was an awful like Herb Tarlick.
There's usually more than one Herb Tarlick in the sales department.
Yeah, sales managers are the same all over the world. A crazy morning man, a sort of wild kind of evening guy. All the characters that were portrayed in WKRP portrays a time in radio that did exist back in the 70s and 80s. And
the receptionists were usually very attractive.
Yep, I was lucky enough to work in that era, and WKRP reminds me of my very first job in rock radio. There was a helium tank in the control room to give you an idea of what was going on.
We shouldn't forget Les Nessman, too.
And Les
every
Nessman,
station, every newsroom had at least one Les Nessman.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very close, Richard. Thanks for the question. Hi, guys. This is from Bisson de Bouchanon. Best guest and worst guest you've had in your time on the radio?
That's an interesting question.
I know for sure.
Okay, away you go.
Joan Armatrading.
Best?
Worst.
Worst, okay.
Absolute worst. Treated me like absolute garbage.
What was she even doing there then?
Well, I don't know. And I was too young. I was intimidated and was just the absolute worst.
Yeah. For me, probably the race car driver from La Chenée. He raced IndyCar, and I can't remember what his name was. He got locked in the stairwell.
Okay.
He couldn't get in the stairwell door to get into the radio station. This was early in the morning before reception was open. Patrick, what's his last name? And he couldn't get in, so he was annoyed at being stuck in the stairwell for 15 minutes. And then when we finally got him into the studio, I mistakenly said he was from Lachine instead of La Chenée. Oh. So I can understand him being annoyed.
Yeah.
But he probably could have handled it more graciously and professionally than he did.
Yeah.
He made it abundantly clear that he was pissed off and he didn't want to be there.
As for my best guess, the list is too long.
It really is.
First ones that come to mind are Guy Lafleur and Jean Beliveau.
Yeah.
The kind of goosebumps that were on my arms when they were in the studio. Eddie Money was a lot of fun. John Bon Jovi was a lot of fun.
Do you remember the day that Dan Aykroyd came in? He was promoting a vodka.
Yeah, it's tequila, I think.
Tequila, yeah. Sam came in that morning, my son, and Sam would have been about 10 at the time, and Dan Aykroyd was so nice to him.
Yeah.
And I've often found, and I remember you saying this, and it's so true, usually, not always, but usually, for whatever reason, or often at least, the bigger the star, the nicer the person.
Yeah. Melissa Etheridge, Jan Arden. Jan Arden was an absolute, and to this day we're friends. She's an absolute hoot.
She's awfully miserable on Twitter, though.
Well, she's got a political campaign that she's
an agenda,
very driven about the transport of horses over to the Asian part of the world. But she's a lovely, lovely woman and was a great guest. And there are so many, because I love interviewing, so many guests over the years that have been absolute joy to be around. Absolute joy. Here's a question. Richard Mrotzik. I hope I'm doing that right, Richard. Here's another how the sausage is made question scenario. A client specifically requests Ted Bird to use his voice for a series of voiceover ads. Even though it's an ad revenue for the radio station, can a radio station refuse the use of Ted Bird's voice and demand somebody else? Has this ever happened? Just using Ted as an example to illustrate my point. Well, I know that I voice ads for my friends at Litrasits, for example. Those things air on CJAD, and I'm not sure if they air on Showm. I don't know. And I have read ads for Felix and Norton Cookies, and we've done ads for Merson, and we're usually compensated for being the voice of an ad. And it is
especially if the client has requested that.
Yeah. And I guess, in the days of serious competition, like, for example, in the days of Q92, when we were doing the show morning show, and Q92 was our big competitor with Aaron and Tasso, if I read an ad for the Mersons on Showm, I would say, "Hi, I'm Terry DeMonte for Merson Automotive." Right. And if the Mersons wanted to buy advertising time on Q,
that wouldn't fly.
Well, they would take the ad, but I wouldn't be able to say, "Hi, I'm Terry DeMonte." I would be like, now a word for the Mersons.
Yeah, I did. I was the English voice of Renault Depot in Quebec for many years, and my commercials played on other radio stations when I was working at Showm and doing Renault Depot commercials, but I was never Ted Bird. I was just the voice. Was that his question?
I think that was the question.
Yeah? Like, would other radio stations?
Yeah, would they be allowed to use it?
Yeah, they would, unless it was a personalized endorsement, and in that case, it would there would have to be other arrangements made.
Yeah, and there was a question that seems to be gone now. I was just looking at it, and it seems to have disappeared. So maybe that person deleted that. Okay, here is. Here's a couple of more. This came from my personal page. Any chance of a podcast with Montreal-born Gino Vanelli? I'd love to have Gino Vanelli on the show. I don't know if he would do it, but we can ask. Claire wants to know if we can get William Shatner on the podcast. William Shatner hates me and will never speak to me, and it's okay because William Shatner and I don't get along.
So that's a no then.
So that's never going to happen. Sorry about that, Claire.
Well, he's also 173 years old.
Yeah,
isn't
it
he?
doesn't matter, and he's not a very nice man.
Yeah.
I have this. Christina says, I have this faint memory of a summer when Kermit the Frog song was being played over and over and over again on the radio in some kind of protest on Montreal radio. I think I was about 8 years old. Was that you, Terry? It was not. That was Ralph Lockwood.
Wow.
Ralph Lockwood back in the day pulled that off at CKGM.
That predates you.
It does.
On Montreal mornings.
Here's one from Anthony Wilson Smith.
Oh, Anthony.
I love Anthony Wilson Smith.
The nicest man.
Nicest man in the world, former editor of Maclean's magazine, now in charge of Historica Canada.
That's right.
If you've seen those heritage minutes about the history of the country, Anthony
He oversees that.
He oversees that. Okay, Tara, serious one. Do you each remember your first meet and initial impressions of each other?
Yeah, it was the night that you came over to my place when I applied for the morning news job at Showm, and you and Ian McLean, who was the program director at the time, came over to my upstairs duplex in NDG, and we had a few glasses of scotch and got along famously, and I was working with you within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember it well. I remember going upstairs and meeting you and your wife, and I remember the scotch. I don't know why. You must have had good scotch. And we had a conversation, and I remember, when you meet somebody and you know right away, I have that radar. I don't know if everybody else does, but in my gut, I thought to myself, oh boy, do I like this guy, and I think I could have a lot of fun with this guy. And I don't know how long we were there. I don't think it was very long. It was nighttime, so we both had to work.
Half, maybe. Yeah.
I think we both had to work the next day. Yeah. So it was nice to meet you. And down the stairs we went. And as the two doors closed on Ian's car, I said to Ian, "You have to make this happen. I want to work with this guy." And
35 years.
35
that
years.
That was 1988.
Here we are. You remember the year? I don't remember the year. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good question, Anthony. Thank you. Hope you're well, by the way. Dario, the music lover. Terry DeMonte and Ted Bird, have you heard from Seen Too Tall? Will you ever have him on an episode? Would you plan an episode with all past and present Showm DJs and office colleagues you are friends with? Have a great day. Dario, I have not spoken to Too Tall. not because we're out of touch, but because I'm retired. Too Tall's retired. Too Tall is a very private man. He he's not a social media guy. He keeps to himself. And I would love to have Too Tall on the podcast.
He'd make a great guest for the podcast.
And we think he'd make a great guest. An episode with all past and present Show'em DJs.
Studio's not big enough.
Yeah, we don't have that many, we don't have that much room.
Yeah.
But we would like to have Pete Marier
We would
on
love
the show.
to have Pete Marier on the show.
And one day I would like to have Randy Renault on the show.
Randy would be great.
One time we should have Jason Rockman on the show.
Jason could come on now because
Yep.
he doesn't work there anymore.
That's right.
Pete and Randy, because they still work there, the fucking assholes who run that place won't let them on. You know why? Because they're fucking assholes. That's why.
We'll be right back. Kim Reynolds wants to know, what's the real story behind Terry, Ted, and Kim? If Show'em came knocking again, would you do it? Well, I can tell you, Kim, there is no chance in hell that Show'em will ever come knocking again. It's not,
Especially not after I just called them fucking assholes.
and it's not just Show'em. I was telling somebody this morning, I think I was telling George this morning, that the radio business is an odd business in that people in the radio game who are in the radio game for a very long time and have a lot of knowledge about the radio game have become persona non grata. Like I was in the business for a long time. I think I had a pretty good career. Nobody has ever phoned me. Nobody has ever asked me a question. Nobody has asked me to talk to a younger broadcaster. Nobody
Well,
bothers.
mentoring no longer exists for
you're
whatever
right.
reason.
And I've been invited to some nice things. Like I was at the Walk of Fame ceremony a few weeks ago. But even if I wanted to work, and I wouldn't mind doing something, part-time, there are just no opportunities for older broadcasters. They're not interested. They're looking for young people that, they can push around and pay a little money
pay
to.
peanuts to.
Yeah, so it's never going to happen. I would love to go back on the radio just part-time. It would be a lot of fun. And the story behind Terry, Ted, and Kim, I don't know what the story is that you want to hear.
Kim joined the morning team when her husband was hired
Yes.
as the program director.
That's correct.
And he said, okay, I'll come,
Yeah.
but my wife needs to come with me, so you
Right.
got to find something for her. So they made her the newsreader
news person.
on the morning show.
Yes.
And I think she was still there when you left and went to Calgary.
Yes.
She was no longer there when I left. I think that her and her husband at that point I forget where they had moved to, but they had moved.
Hamilton, I think.
Yeah. So that's the story. As best I could tell it to
Yeah.
you.
I'm not sure what story you mean, but that's how it came to pass.
That's how it came to pass,
Yeah.
and that's how it evolved, and then eventually ended. Kim is in Niagara Falls now, I believe.
I believe so.
And she works for a charitable organization.
I believe so.
And does quite well at it, I think, because every time I see one of her posts on LinkedIn,
Yep.
there's a lot of activity on it.
And
And her mom was terrific, eh? Marianne, wasn't she the
was
best?
Great. And her husband Bob is retired, I think.
He is, eh?
I think so, yeah.
Well, Bob went through a health scare, as most of us have by the time we get to this age, but he came through the other side.
He certainly did.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. He certainly did.
I couldn't let that go, I
know.
suppose.
I wish you would have, because I don't want Bob to think that we wish him ill will. We wish
No,
him
of course
nothing
we
but the
don't.
best.
No.
Absolutely. Now, those are all the questions as we have them.
In a day, you don't know how to get them all answered.
So I don't see any on Twitter. If I missed any of the questions, you know what? I'm going to post that slide again before we do more episodes, because I like that. It's a way of answering questions, and
It's a way of engaging the audience.
and it's also a way of saying thank you. You know, we always thank our sponsors, but we also want to thank the people that download the podcast.
Yeah, if you weren't downloading the
Yeah.
podcast, the sponsors wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. God bless you. I want to mention quickly two things that I've recently watched that I highly recommend. Watch the Mr. Dress Up documentary on
Oh, yeah?
Prime. Yeah. If you're a Canadian, if you if you watched Mr. Dress Up when you were a kid, our cats are called Casey and Finnegan. My wife is a massive Mr. Dress Up fan. And as a matter of fact, we have a painting of Mr. Dress Up, Casey and Finnegan in the house, like an original painting by a BC artist in the house. We're big fans. This documentary is such a lovely, warm, wonderful love letter to a life well led, to an amazing, Canadian who actually came up from the States. Mr. Dress Up, Ernie Coombs, and Fred Rogers were good friends.
Wow.
And Ernie and Fred came up together. Fred worked for the CBC for about a year, and Ernie stayed behind and became Mr. Dress Up. And he had a really interesting and somewhat sad life, I think. His wife was killed in the most stupid, bizarre accident. She was coming out of a Loblaws in Toronto, and a car had an accident on the street and drove into the Loblaws, and she was killed at the age of 55. Just an awful, awful story. But the documentary is not depressing. It's a celebration of his life.
Right.
If you loved Mr. Dress Up or you watched it when you were a kid, highly recommend it. And the other thing that I absolutely loved, and I highly recommend, you probably already know about this, is the David Beckham documentary. My wife has turned me into a Premier League soccer fan, and I know more and more about it every weekend. And David Beckham is one of the greatest soccer players of all time, greatest football players of all time, as they say over there, and also one of the most interesting cats and nicest men, and has an interesting family. Talk about a power couple. He married Posh Spice.
Yeah, well, he's a cultural icon.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, Ted. Beckham documentary is on Netflix. Mr. Dress Up is on Prime.
Now, before we say goodbye,
Yes.
we got a couple of shout-outs,
Yes, we do.
including one to our great and good friends at Merson Automotive. We were down there this week while recording the podcast, and
Yes.
we saw Kara
Yep.
and Celso, who are the third generation of the Merson family to be running that joint. Ben Merson started it in 1970. When he retired, his son Mark and Mark's wife Bonnie took over, and now Mark and Bonnie are happily retired. And would they be in Puerto Vallarta by now?
I'm not sure. I think
Well,
they
if they're
might
not
wait
there,
till
they're
January.
packing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're getting ready to go. Yeah.
So Kara and Celso. Kara and Celso, are running the place now and running it with the same efficiency and the same, and Terry talks about it time and time again, that same family touch that is so important to us when we take on sponsors, and is important to us as customers of Merson Auto. That's a big part of what keeps me going back there. Good, decent, honest people who will never, ever sell you a product that you don't need or perform a service that you don't need. And that's why generations of families keep going back to Merson again and again and again. This is the busy winter tire season.
Cripes, is it ever?
If you need new winter tires, go down to Merson. They've got tires for all cars and all budgets. And as always, there is a rebate offer available on Yokohama, which is their what's the word I'm looking for? It's their co-op brand. They do a lot of work, a lot of business with Yokohama, and that's a pretty good brand to hitch your wagon to, because that is a long-standing quality tire brand. Whatever you need in terms of tires or other products, repairs, maintenance, which is extremely important at any time of the year. And the Mersons, while they're changing your tires, they'll give your car the once-over, and if there's anything you need, they'll tell you what, and if you don't need anything, they'll tell you that too, because they're good, honest people.
I'm telling you, a person will answer the phone, but give them some time. Yesterday, I thought they were giving away Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah, I know.
When we were there, the phone rang so much. It was just great.
And
But
that's
it's
everyone calling to make their appointment to change their winter tires.
Yeah, but it's one of the great things. An actual person picks up the phone.
Yeah, Val is usually the one who answers the phone, and she's absolutely lovely. I like to refer to Val as my third wife. I don't know how she would feel about that, but there it is, Val.
Okay.
Right there. MersonAuto.com.
Another visit we made this week, I took Ted to Matelas Bonheur for a little lie down.
Yeah, I took a new comforter out for a test nap, and I liked it, so I bought it.
It was really something. We went in. There are 18 locations of Matelas Bonheur all around the island of Greater Montreal. Actually, 17 locations, and there's the online store, of course. But the very first store opened years ago on Saint Geneviève. They had a pickup truck and some mattresses to sell, and that's where they started all of these years ago. Quinn Boulevard in Saint Geneviève. That store is still there. And how beautiful is that store? Like, that store itself is comforting.
It's really nice. It's really, really nice. And I never would have thought that I would go into like a mattress store, a bedding store, and go, wow, this is...
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are many nice mattress and bedding stores, but this one was spectacular.
You get welcomed with a big smile. Yesterday, when we were there, the other day when we were there, Kevin welcomed us with open arms, asked Ted some questions about how he slept and what he was looking for. And you walked out of there with an adult covering for the bed.
Yeah, what do you call it? A duvet.
A duvet
and a duvet cover.
Yeah.
And of the highest quality. And the important thing to me was I'm a schwitzer.
Yeah,
when
you are.
I sweat in my sleep. And I had the previous comforter I had was too heavy. And so I would wake up in a pool of my own sweat. I know that this is probably not am I approaching this the wrong way? People don't want to know about me sweating in my sleep. But I'm trying to get across the point that Kevin needed to know that information so that he could get the right product for me.
And you got it.
And he did.
Yep. And right now there's a promo code discount. You can just mention Terry. Type in Terry or Ted, give you up to 10% off, 5% off promo items, 10% off regularly priced items. Walk in the store or type it in if you're ordering online. You will not be disappointed. Mattresses and bedding are so important to daily life because we spend so much time asleep. You want experts to handle it for you. MatelasBonheur.ca.
Just before we go, do you ever get those phishing scams on text? Like
Yes.
You get a message from someone who's like obviously trying to rope you in so that I just got one. Hey, David, it's Chrissy. The wine you gave me was great. Do you still have some saved, please? So I like to play with them. So I'm writing back, no, but I'll send you a urine sample. And you can see what you can extract from that. I think that's a good response, don't you?
It's a fantastic response.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for downloading this guest-free episode of the Standing By podcast. Our thanks to our sponsors. Our thanks to you. Our thanks to our podfathers, Mike Ward and Pantelis. And Poseidon, of course, we can't do it without you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for being in studio. Thank you for your presence. And thank you for your wisdom.
Oh, wisdom. We have wisdom?
Apparently so.
All right.
He must have us confused with someone else.
All right. We're off to get a coffee. All the best. Do keep in touch.
Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast has been brought to you by the UPS Store Canada. The UPS store near you is locally owned and operated by a member of your small business community.